Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and council. We are ready to start our regular council meeting for November 14th. It is 1 p.m. I would call the meeting to order, and I would ask at this time if any council members have any added items to this agenda. Seeing none, then, I would please ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Yes, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would make the motion that we adopt the agenda for the regular council meeting for Monday, November 14th, 2022 at 1 p.m.
Thank you. I will then call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we are, our regrets today from Councillor Daly. And moving along now to item C, proclamations and announcements. We have none today. Moving down to page 3 of your agenda, please. Oh, yes, correct. Page 3, item 2A. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve, and I'll start with the first set of regular council meeting minutes, and I'd ask for a motion, please. Deputy Mayor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the minutes from the October 11th, 2022 regular council meeting be adopted as presented.
Does council have any questions to these minutes? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we will now move forward to the organizational meeting minutes. Motion, please. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the organizational meeting minutes of October 24th, 2022 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I will open the floor if there's any questions. Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And for the special council meeting, please, a motion. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the special council meeting minutes from October 31st, 2022 be adopted as presented.
Once again, I will ask council if you have any questions to the special council meeting minutes. Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Item 3, business arising from the minutes. Councillor Blatt, or Deputy Mayor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I do have some arising from the October 11th, 2022 meeting, and the PAC committee, the Art Advisory Committee, and FCSS. Did we notify those members that of the termination of their position, but particularly with the Public Art Advisory, that they would continue on in an ad hoc capacity?
We had C.R. Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, all members were notified specifically to the PAC committee that they'll be transitioning to an administrative run committee. So,
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Any further questions? Very good, thank you. Moving down to item 4, please, public hearing. We have no public hearing. Item 5, delegations and presentations. We have no delegations or presentations. Item 6 for bylaws. Page 16, bylaw 2022-18 cemetery bylaw. And I will start by asking for first reading on the floor. Okay, Councillor Cummings.
Okay, that the cemetery bylaw 2022-18 be given first reading as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings, and I would ask, does council have questions? Seeing none. Oh, thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. So, a little slow on the hand up in the air, so sorry about that. I don't have a question, more like a comment, and I reviewed this document after there was quite a few changes that were made from our PMP meeting, and I do have a comment about page 20. Under the general rules 3.4, it says with regards to animals, it says owners must have control of their animal. I would think that we would rather have it say on a leash. Simply because people could say they have their animal under control and their animal's running around, or it's not on a leash. I'm not sure whether or not we're even, so what's the feeling about that with regards to anybody else? I just thought maybe it'd be more specific if we said on a leash.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Ryan. And our legislative clerk had a point, or do you want to defer it to the CAO?
I can speak to that, thank you. When we discussed this, we went back and forth because being an agricultural town, we've seen horses. We've seen different things. Well, it's not necessarily a leash, it's a bridle, so then we get into semantics. So basically, we just want our owners of pets that bring any animals to have them under control. If you feel that there needs to be changes, you'd have to put them forward and we'd vote for council, ask for council to have consensus.
Any other council like to speak to this item? Deputy Mayor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and thank you, Legislative Clerk McKinnon. That makes perfect sense to me. And you are correct, I have seen horses at the cemetery, so I believe that this is a very common sense approach to the bylaw. Thank you.
Councillor Walsh, and then back to Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, I do prefer the term control because it implies something even more than a leash. I've seen, let's say, dogs on leashes that were not in control, and I think people need to understand there's a difference. And yeah, I think they would imply automatically that a control means also a leash.
Councillor Ryan?
Well, I don't have a real big problem with the word control. I understand that we're trying to make sure that people that know that they can't have their animals running all over the place. But the problem is when when we're not specific enough, some people just say, well, I do believe my dog is under control when they're off a leash, and they're not. And, it's all in perception and how people perceive their animal being under control or not. If we say they're on a leash or on a bridle or have a tether of any kind, I think that that's a little bit more specific. But I'm not going to die on this hill, so I'll leave it. But I just thought I would throw that out there because I think that a lot of people say the dog is under control and they're not.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Ryan. Deputy Mayor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to either Director Wagstaff or CEO Williams. Is it not stated right within our bylaw on animal control that all dogs in a public area must be on a leash or under control in such way?
Under the community standards bylaw, yes. Dogs in a public space are to be on a leash unless otherwise posted.
Thank you for sharing that information, Deputy Mayor Blatz. Any further comments? We do have first reading on the floor from Councillor Cummings then. If there's no further comments, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor for first reading? That's carried. I'd ask for a second reading, please. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would move that Cemetery Bylaw 2022-18 be given second reading as presented.
Okay, are there discussion for prior on second reading? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. May I get consent for third reading on the floor? Deputy Mayor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Cemetery Bylaw 2022-18 be given unanimous consent for third reading.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? None opposed? That's carried. And third and final reading, please. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would move that the Cemetery Bylaw 2022-18 be given third and final reading as presented.
I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? None opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Page 29, please. Item 6B. This is bylaw 2022-22, purchasing cards. Would you like to speak to this, CEO Williams?
Yes, I'll speak to this on behalf of Director Lindeman. This is a fairly standard bylaw regarding town credit cards. The request here is to increase the total borrowing limit for town purchasing cards from its current $85,000 to $100,000. basically because the transactions that we are doing with these cards largely involve deposits, whether it be hotel rooms, purchases, and the volume of cards we have, which I believe is over 12 now, we're finding that we're reaching our limit quicker with some cards that are used more often than others for holding deposits or what have you. So this would allow us a bit more room to expand credit limits on a few cards.
Thank you for those points. We'll start with putting first reading on the floor, please. Deputy Mayor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that bylaw 2022-22 being a borrowing bylaw to establish the total combined amount of credit of $100,000 that can be used for the Town of Olds purchasing cards to be introduced and given first reading.
Thank you to Deputy Mayor. Does council have any further questions? Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Wilson and then back to Deputy Mayor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and if I may, just a quick question for the CAO. I'm just wondering, I don't want to divert the attention from the objective of the bylaw, but can you talk a little bit just about the internal controls we have on the dozen or so cards that we have issued?
Sure. So all these cards are issued by the Bank of Montreal through a contract with the Alberta Municipalities, called AMSC. So just like a personal card, we have an online portal that tracks expenses. That online portal, what's called the monthly statement that is produced from there, they mimic or are matched to our internal process, essentially for receipt collection. That when a card is used, a town card is used, the card holder has to submit a receipt as part of their monthly reconciliation. For certain purchases, actually I would say the vast majority of purposes, it has to be coded to our general ledger, exactly where that expense applies to. For instance, if it's parts for a piece of machinery, that it's coded to the correct department and the correct line item. If it's, for example, a promotional item, whether it be staff appreciation or meals, there's certain controls in place around who attended certain promotional items, if it was a group or if it was individual dinners. If it was a hotel accommodation, for instance, it's listed as an event that is then coded to that department or that person. In the case of council, it would be a person in their budget plans. So it has been working well. We have no concerns over our cost controls. The largest risk with credit cards is that potential piece for fraud. And the only thing we have in place, so the only thing that we have seen risk in is the lost receipts, essentially. That if people aren't prompt in returning the receipts to accounts payable, then we have seen receipts go missing. Then we have to have an affidavit process and whatnot to ensure our paperwork's in line. With our annual audit by external auditors, credit cards tend to be one of the more prone areas for examination as well. So.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Blatz.
Thank you. And that was going to be part of my question and a comment as well. Under our background here, and this would probably be through Mayor Dahl to probably CEO Williams, the purchasing cards are through the AMSC, and I had an individual read the agenda on the weekend and wondered what the acronym stood for. So perhaps maybe we could be a little bit more consistent and explain that today for the viewing public and as well going forward, perhaps. We don't use the acronym, or if we use the acronym, at least put in brackets behind it what it stands for.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I believe it's the Alberta Municipal Services Corporation, which is a subsidiary of Alberta Municipalities, which is essentially a buying group that allows us to obtain various services and goods, in this case credit cards, in a more structured and easy manner.
Thank you for that.
Any further questions? We have first reading from Deputy Mayor Blatz on the floor. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I'm looking for second reading. Councillor Walsh?
Thank you. I move that bylaw 2022-22, being a borrowing bylaw to establish the total combined amount of credit of $100,000 that can be used for the Town of Olds purchasing cards, be given second reading.
Very good. Are there any added comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Looking for consent for third reading, please. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Mayor. Move that the unanimous consent be given to present borrowing bylaw 2022-22 for third reading.
Thank you. We have the motion on the floor. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried for third and unanimous, and we will move to third and final reading. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that bylaw 2022-22 being a borrowing bylaw to establish a total combined amount of credit of $100,000 that can be used for the town of Olds purchasing cards be given third reading.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. I will just check to see if the legislative clerk has the person in the room for our next item 6.
Samar, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. We'll start with
Glad to be here.
yeah, you bet. We'll start with bylaw 2022-24, and this is the East Olds Area Structure Plan Amendment.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, one moment.
Okay,
Please move forward. Thank you.
so the proposed parcel or the proposed application, the location of this is located along 4802 54th Street. Now, the goal of the application is to change the zoning of the parcel from general residential R2 to neighborhood commercial CN district. Now, this would require an amendment to the East Old area redevelopment plan and an amendment to the land use bylaw. The applicant plans to have a boys and girls club with 30 to 40 children as a daycare use. So mainly the purpose of this application is to reflect and update the zoning bylaw and the redevelopment plans to reflect the current use of the property. So we recommend that council gives first reading to both of the bylaws and that council sets Monday, December 12th as for a public hearing on both of the bylaws.
Thank you very much for sharing that information, and we have our request for decision with us. I will start with putting first reading on the floor for 2022-24. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council gives first reading to bylaw number 2022-24 and
We'll just leave that for any comments from council at this point before we move on from first reading. Thank you, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do have one quick question about this property. So I moved here in 2015. This was a commercial property and has been a commercial property since then as a yoga studio. So I'm kind of confused about why the need to change it now if it doesn't already allow for commercial property in this R zoning that it's in now as R3, since it's been a commercial property for so long. Or was that just we didn't know it was a commercial property for this long in the wrong zoning area?
Thank you. C.O. Williams, would this be a question we deal with at the public hearing?
No, this wouldn't come up to public hearing. I would have to get some background information on the parcel itself to verify why it's been used as commercial but not zoned as commercial, unless Samar could speak to that use versus zoning.
Samar, would you be able to answer the question of Council Cummings?
Sure thing. As far as my understanding goes, I did have a talk with the planners as well. And it seems that, the latter concern is the correct one, is that it has been used as a commercial property, it has been taxed as such, but the zoning just did not reflect the actual use of the property.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Cummings, and the answer. Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I would just like a description, a differentiation between a neighbor commercial property and a regular commercial property. And yeah, and I agree, it's a daycare before it becomes a studio. But yeah, why? I'm just curious as to why now.
Theo Williams.
Yeah, and that I'll have to defer to Samara's, our director and our development officer, both on sick leave today. So, Samara, could you answer Councillor Walsh's question?
Sure thing. The zoning or the differentiation between neighborhood commercial, well, it allows for limited uses as opposed to a traditional central commercial parcel. And just I guess some of the thought behind it is that by limiting certain uses, it will still be serving the neighborhood as well in a neighborhood context. As to why this is the case, just from my understanding, it seems as it has been a slip up. They are currently they're wanting to apply for a daycare use, and it would be a central, it would be a commercial use, and the only use that really reflects the context of the property as it is in a high density area for residential purposes, as in the neighborhoods. There's R3 zonings around it. There's light industrial around it. There's even central commercial uses along 54 streets. Central commercial is central neighborhood, sorry, is the only use that really reflects the zoning and the context of the property. And yeah, as we're going to have a change of use development permit being submitted by the applicant upon approval of the amendment, it just seems to be the correct time to have this process being undertaken now, as opposed to just not doing it.
Very good, thank you. We are giving first reading as the amendment only at this time, so thank you for sharing that information. And we have first reading now on the floor from Councillor Ryan. And I would like to move forward then to call the vote for first reading on the East Olds Area Redevelopment Plan, amendment to the East Olds Area Redevelopment Plan. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? None opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And motion, please, for first reading of 2022-25. Deputy Mayor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Riddell. I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 2022-25 and...
Thank you. Once again, we have asked quite a few questions. This now is going to be the same procedure. It's first reading, and it's for the land use district map amendment. And if there's no questions, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor, first reading? That is carried. Thank you. And I would also like now to set the public hearing date. Motion? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'd make the motion that council sets Monday, December 12th, 2022 at 1 p.m. in council chambers as the date, time, and place for a public hearing on bylaws number 2022-24 and 2022-25.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson. I would then call the vote. Those in favor? No objection. That's carried. And I'd also like to thank our guest for your time in sharing some of our questions. So we'll see you in December. Is he gone? Very good. We'll now move forward for our viewers, page 32 and council, item 6C. Oops, sorry, we just finished that one. Page 41, please, item 6D. This is bylaw 2022-26, MPC bylaw. I'll have to get to the right place. All right, we've talked about this several times in other council meetings, and we'll start then by getting first reading on the floor. Councillor Walsh?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Municipal Planning Commission amending bylaw 2022-26 be given first reading as presented.
Councillor Walsh. Before moving on for the follow-up of readings, are there questions? Councillor Ryan.
No question. Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. I just have a comment in that I will not be supporting this. I spoke out about it, against it several times already. I think my position is fairly clear.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. We have a motion on the floor for first reading from Councillor Walsh. Those in favor? That's carried. Sorry. Yes. My apology, Councillor Ryan is opposed. We'll move down. I would ask at this time if we could get second reading for this bylaw. Deputy Mayor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the Municipal Planning Commission amending bylaw 2022-26 be given second reading as presented.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. At this time, I'll call for the vote on second reading. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We will be looking now for unanimous consent, and I would ask for a motion, please. Councillor Wilson.
I make the motion that the Municipal Planning Commission amending bylaw 2022-26 be given unanimous consent for third reading.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed? That's defeated. We will not be carrying on with third and final reading at this point. Thank you. We will now be moving to new business, page 43 of your agenda, item 7A. All right. This is the MAP Committee Terms of Reference. I'd like a motion on the floor, please. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council accept for information the Municipal Area Partnership, or MAP, Committee's terms of references as presented.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cummings. Questions on this item? Okay, we've got three questions. I think. Okay, we'll start with Councillor Ryan, Councillor Cummings, and then Deputy Mayor Blatt.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I just have a question on page 47 when it talks about the financials. There is I assume that in reading this information that there's a budget, and obviously they're keeping records, but I'm wondering if you're posting a financial statement that would be presented annually or not.
Thank you. I can answer your question, and I'm going to say no. At this point, our managing partner is doing the financial statements and include them in the agenda at the appropriate time. I can ask my CAO if he's aware of any upcoming ones.
The financial statement is given at, I believe, each meeting by the county CAO. And generally, there's not a large cash flow, unless there's a grant like there was for the regional recreation plan. But, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. I'd like to have further comments for you. However, we really don't have that much money, and we haven't spent any. There's been the one-time dollars, but whenever it comes up, it will come in with the minutes, so it'll be you'll be privy to that. Secondly, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'd just like to go to Chapter 2, membership. Under this category of membership, because traditionally since I've been on council, it's always been the mayor. I thought the MAP was a meeting of the mayors, whereas this is simply stating a council member. So can you just clarify for me there, is it meant to be a meeting of mayors or just a meeting of a representative from each council?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Since the inception of the terms of reference, and municipal area partnerships. That question's come up often because the surrounding municipal area partners all had questioned several times on why the Mountain View County had 3 representatives, and they refused to change that position. So at that time, we left it at council members. They felt that their area was much larger and they needed to have the Reeve and extra council on there. So it is represented as the order, as the Reeves and Mayors, and we'll be rotating at the current meeting that's coming up. We will be actually appointing these people with the current, which is the town of Olds at this point. There should have been a vice chair already appointed. However, when we came in from the election directly into that, we never did that actual appointment. So it will be dealt with the meeting when we gather together for our joint meeting after as well. Follow up?
Yes, Mayor, a follow-up. There are a lot of useful information there, but I don't think my question was actually answered. So I'm not talking about Mountain View County. I'm just talking about the entire membership section there that talks about council, a council member. Whereas it was my understanding from previous conversations we've had that map was a meeting of the mayors and Reeves. So I understand putting council in there for that third person from Mountain View County, don't care. What I am concerned about is this does not talk about a meeting of the mayors and Reeves. This talks about a meeting of a representative of each council via a council member. So I just wanted some clarification there. Is this a group of mayors or is this a group of councillors as is described in the terms of reference? Because in the terms of reference, it doesn't talk about mayors or Reeves, it talks about councillors. I just want some clarification there. Maybe that needs to go back to MAP for some clarification if this is actually a meeting of just mayors and Reeves.
You're 100% correct, and it would, we can definitely bring that back. It has been discussed at the table, and it is not clear in this terms of reference. So thank you for bringing that up to us, and it is actually a discussion that we were going to have. We are trying to now all understand better, and there's people that do read it that way, and thank you for bringing that to our point, and I'll go to Deputy Mayor Ryan, or Deputy Mayor Blatz, and then to Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Actually, that was part of my point. I was just going to suggest that, being that this is an advisory committee only of member municipalities and that there will be one council member, which in fact the mayor is still a council member, even though she has, or he or she has the designation of mayor, perhaps it should just be council mayors predominantly made up of, or council members predominantly made up of mayors, or with the exception of the Mountain View County, just some verbiage I thought should be changed, and it was going to be my recommendation.
I agree 100% with what I'm hearing from council sharing on the floor. This is definitely not clear enough, and it will be brought back on behalf of my council to the table. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. I do have a comment about the membership as well. I was just wondering, this terms of reference, is this a brand-new thing that you guys are doing, or is this an old terms of reference?
That's a good question, and I'll let the legislative clerk, who's helped since the beginning of, tell you what she has to say, but it's not new. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. This is pretty much the basic and the original terms of reference since 2008. In 2016, it was slightly amended to include, just scrolling here, about the recording secretary and general record management, because that really wasn't touched on. And now, just in June of 2022, they've gently updated this, and they're bringing it to councils now for approval and comments.
Oh, supplemental, go ahead.
Yes, so thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. This is supplemental. So if this terms of reference was back in 2008, that
2016 was the last time council saw it.
2016, but it was originally done in 2008, correct? Then the composition though of the board, of the map board?
The composition of the map was created by a grant in 2018, where the map committee got $150,000 to work. sorry, 2008. What did I say? Sorry, yeah, 2008. And it was a grant for economic development and regional partnerships and collaborative type work. And then,
I don't need more details. Thank you very much, Legislative Clerk. So it was created in 2008 with this membership in place. In 2008, that was quite a few years ago when Town of Olds was much smaller. I'm just kind of questioning why the county would have three people and Town of Olds has just one, when you consider that, yes, they cover more ground. Population-wise, though, we've gained quite a lot in population, and they've got maybe a third more than us, but not two-thirds more than us. So I am questioning the number of representation on this group. And my second point would be, so I think that needs to be reviewed. And my second point is this is just an advisory group. So why would there need to be a balance anyway? You're all bringing a conversation to the table. So it doesn't make any sense to me that they would get more say than anybody else.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Ryan. CEO Williams?
Yeah, even though I'm relatively new here still, I actually asked the same question when I arrived. And the county, their answer made sense at the time in the summer. It's not so much, since the PIC committee doesn't vote, it has no authority, really. They just felt they would contribute more to the group if they had representatives from a broader geographical region, whereas like Water Valley may have different issues, perspectives than north of Olds or wherever the council lies. So I believe at the time, earlier this summer, and then obviously 2016, 2008, everyone accepted that logic, since the board wasn't, the committee wasn't making any decision that didn't come back to respective councils for approval. So.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Yes, and I respect all these questions around the table, and I'll keep them in my notes for further discussions. All right. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Cummings. If there's no further comments to be shared, I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Page 48, please, item 7B, Mountain View County Library appointment. And if we could get a motion on the floor, please. Councillor Walsh? Oh, sorry. That's the hard part of having a deputy mayor sit beside you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council accepts the Mountain View County Council appointment of Councillor Jennifer Lutz to the Olds Municipal Library Board and endorse the appointment to the OML for a term of 1 year to expire at the 2023 organizational meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walsh. Does council have any questions to this? Hearing none then, or seeing none, I'd call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Moving down now to page 50 of your agenda, item 7C. A motion, please. Deputy Mayor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the Broadband Investment Committee, BIC, be dissolved and that bylaw 2021-03 be rescinded.
Does council wish to speak to this prior to the vote? Okay, the request for decision is clear. I will then call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Page 53 of your agenda, please. Item 7D, solid waste service level. Would you like to start with this, please, CAO Williams?
Thank you, Mary Dahl. As discussed at PMP and earlier, this RFD is asking council to approve the change in service level, which would allow administration to enter into a 1-year contract for solid waste collection. As noted in the 2 bullet points in the recommendation, the green bin rollout suspension from approximately November 1st to April 30th, those are fluid dates, of course. It will depend on perhaps on the year and the weather of the fall versus in the spring to amend those dates. And then the reduction in number of the 3-yard community compost bins from 100 to 40. So, and this would all take effect January 1st of 2023.
Thank you for sharing that. I still am getting questions, and we will be, I'm glad to see this coming because that gives the opportunity for our public and citizens to be able to hear us once again discuss this at our service levels. Does council have any other further comments? Deputy Mayor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I just want to say through you to CEO Williams, thank you for the clarification on the suspension of the green bin pickup from November 1st to April 30th. I did have a concern with that date, but if it is not a hard date, and it will be fluid dependent upon the type of spring or fall we have, then I can move ahead with this as it's presented.
Very good, thank you. I would ask for a motion on the floor, please. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Before I make a motion, I just want to clarify, do you want all points within the same motion? Is that what we're looking for?
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. I move that council accept the service levels changes as noted, suspending green bin pickup between November 1st and April 30th, taking effect January 2023, and reducing the number of 3-yard compost bins from 100 to 40 and placed at locations to be announced.
Any further comments? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So just for my clarification, so any matters, items related to black bins and/or blue bins would, if there are any changes, be part of a separate recommendation motion then?
CEO Williams?
Correct. Since that would be a change to the service level the town offers, it will be brought to council for consideration. For now, blue bins and black bins remain status quo.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Williams. I'll call for the vote at this time. Those in favor? Opposed? Okay, I didn't catch you. I'm sorry. Thank you. That's carried. Item 8, reports from council will be at the end of the month. Item 9, page 54, CAO report. CEO Williams? Councillor Ryan? My apology.
No problem. Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. Just wanted to, before we advance past the reports, not sure whether the reports that we have, are they, sorry, they're in with correspondence. Never mind. I wanted to
Right.
speak to the correspondence
Right.
reports. Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, we do have correspondence, that's right. You'll be able to do that at the end of the month, though. Thank you. Go ahead, CEO Williams.
Thank you. I only have two quick items. First thing, administration will be sending a note out to council for a second special budget meeting of council. I believe our procedural bylaw says that the mayor can call a meeting based on certain amounts of notice. So we'll be throwing a couple dates at you for next week and the week after to try to find a meeting date. And that time we'll have operating budget options along with a review of a slightly adjusted capital budget. So that's just for information. Hopefully by the end of today or tomorrow you'll see that in your inboxes. The second thing is an attachment to your agenda package. It's called council action items. It's something that myself and the legislative clerk have put together. Right now, what is in your package, or as you can scroll down, is just items left over from PMP, and that will probably be the majority of council action items because they don't necessarily follow a resolution in the same way, but it's also open to adjustment as need be. So hopefully as a way that we can keep track of decisions made at PMP that aren't actually decisions, more of direction from council to administration. So as you can see, the two bolded items are ones that have been communicated or completed already, blue bin costs and the invitation to user group. The other three items are pending, just waiting to get information to council as we collect it. So, but also open to anything, doesn't have to be right now, but as it progresses, if council feels that it's lacking information on direction given previously, by all means, bring it up and we can adjust this list as might need be. So, and that's all I had.
Thank you. Does council have anything for our CAO? Very good. I'd entertain a motion, please. Deputy Mayor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the verbal CAO report be accepted for information.
I'll call for the vote at this time. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have no financial. We are now on page 56 of your agenda, item 11A, correspondence. I will open the floor to Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, appreciate that.
Excuse me, can I get a motion on the floor
Sure.
first, please?
Sure, I can do that. I move that the correspondence and information report ending November 14th, 2022 be received for information. And I
Now,
just-
questions, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to speak to item on the page, I believe it is 62, with regards to the key messages from Mountain View Seniors Housing. Just to point out to everyone that the board approved the 2023 operating and capital budgets. With this, we also approved the requisition. And from that, just to get some little bit of details for council to know that we've had, we had recommended a 15% increase in the requisition. And this is due to quite a lot to inflationary costs. I believe I mentioned at one point, when you look at some of the items that we've had, I can give you pretty much 4 reasons why this has gone up to a certain extent. Food in particular has gone up, well, over $100,000 that we're looking at from between 2022 and 2023. Insurance has gone up $80,000 from 2022 to 2023. And we also have wages that we assume will go up quite a bit. We do have to deal with 2 unions, so those haven't been finalized. But we are looking at a substantial increase there. And just having those 3 things increasing means that we need to increase the budget to cover those expenses rather than going into deficit budgeting. And also we have, we've been dealing with vacancies within our buildings. They're all coming up. Our occupancy is increasing, so that's good. But we still have challenges, and that's the reasons why we ended up having to look at a 15% increase in the requisition. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Councillor Ryan. Does council have any further questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. If I could ask the CEO just to remind me again from a previous meeting, what the increase has been in the Mountain View Senior Housing requisition over the last 3, 4, 5 years?
Yes, if you, council, would just afford me 20 seconds to, oh, sure. If Council Ryan has that ready, she can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Wilson, the requisitions had not increased in the past 2, perhaps 3 years. They actually went down slightly last year. However, we didn't have the inflationary problems that we have right now that we're all experiencing, including in our municipal world. So the increase, I can't remember, was last done in 2018, was fairly substantial, but that also was due to a number of outside influences that were totally beyond the control of Mountain View Seniors Housing Board.
Joe Williams.
And just to add, I did find the numerical calculations. So in 2022, the requisition decreased by 2.69%. In 2021, it increased by 2.66%, so essentially a wash in the last 2 years. And then 2020, going backwards, it was anywhere from 51% increase to a 4.71 increase. So I think the number I gave since previous meetings since 2015, our total change percentage-wise has been 256%. And I believe those years are the higher years, where it's 23%, 48, 51% were build years, if I'm not mistaken, too, perhaps. So, but yeah, it's been substantial.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So just a supplemental, there. And again, as a municipality and per provincial regulations and everything, we have no say in terms of the requisition. We are obligated to accept it. And a question for Councillor Ryan, just wondering what interventions, other interventions they've looked at, recognizing the inflationary pressures on wages and food and insurance, what other opportunities they've looked at.
Councillor Ryan, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to make sure I was able to go ahead. Okay. Thank you for that question, Councillor Wilson. Yes, we understand that it's a bitter pill to swallow. However, we are making progress. We have worked with our insurance company. They have gone through our buildings. We are now getting some information back to us. Will be presented at our next board meeting with regards to what they've discovered within our buildings. I don't see much of a change, though. Insurance is what it is. I mean, everybody's seen that increase on their own home insurance, car insurance, and everything. So that's just the industry. We do make sure that we are dealing with contracts. We've gone through our contracts to try to get the most out of them to be as efficient as possible. We are also meeting with, in fact, I had a meeting this morning with an assistant deputy minister to discuss some of the pressures that we are under. They understand at the government provincial level that there needs to be a bit more support. In fact, Danielle Smith herself has come out just in the last week and said that she is looking at trying to increase, possibly increase anyway, hopefully, the Alberta Seniors Benefit Program. They are looking at the Lodge Assistance Program next year. They will be looking at all the lodges. So they are, we have had quite a bit of lobbying and advocacy on behalf of seniors in our community to the province, as well as to our own, our board that represents us, which is the Alberta, what is it, ASHA, I'm trying to think of what the abbreviation is, Alberta Seniors and Community Housing Association. They are doing a lot of advocacy on behalf of seniors and low-income residents within our communities. So I think with, getting in front of the faces of the government will help. It's just a matter of, this all takes time. So like I said, we've gone through all of our contracts to make sure that we are being as efficient as possible. We have a very good, solid staff that is very supportive of our seniors, and I think that that's one of the biggest benefits of all, is having a very strong staff. So, a lot of the inflation, there isn't really anything we can do about that, except to go back to our contractors and say, hey, can we, tighten up the money a little bit, but at the end of the day, you have to pay for food and you have to pay for utilities, and those are all expenses that everybody else is facing as well.
CEO Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And just to Councillor Wilson's first comment on avenues available to us, outside of minister intervention, which is available in any ministry that municipalities follow, Section 7 of the Alberta Housing Act, which I just pulled up. I did not memorize it. Requisitions must be paid to cover the annual deficit of a seniors housing body, which basically means the amount they charge residents versus the expenditures, or to establish any necessary reserve. So that second piece is a pretty broad piece, because a reserve can be established for many things, operations, capitals, etc. So that's where it generally comes into it. Regarding long-term strategy, I believe, since it is regional, all the members of MAP, or all the members who are part of Mountain View Seniors Housing, that would be an avenue to discuss any interest in long-term strategy with our seniors housing body. So.
Thank you for sharing that information around the table. You are correct. There has been many questions in regards to the status of the province with seniors, especially when they had the rollout of providing funds for families for seniors aging at home. I don't know where that sits today. Have you heard any updates on that, Councillor Ryan?
Well, we have had conversations with the province with regards to that. There seems to be a bit of two minds happening. You know, they've been funding, they want to fund additional home care to allow seniors to stay in their homes longer, and yet we have lodge vacancies. So, you know, you can't have it both ways. You have to sort of have a good balance. I'm not exactly sure. I know that they with regards to the change in leadership of the province, I'm not sure where Daniel Smith stands with regards to further involvement in that area with regards to the more home care funding or whatever. But I guess time will tell.
And that's exactly what we're hearing a lot of is we can't have it both ways. If families are opting to keep their seniors at home with them, then your beds are going to be empty, and the model needs to be revisited for sure. Thank you very much for sharing that information. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Ryan at this point. Is there any further comments? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And we are now at the end of our meeting, and it is 1:58 p.m. May I have a motion for adjournment, please? Nobody wants to adjourn? You could stay. We'll stay. Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Deputy Mayor Blatz. This is not easy having a deputy mayor on the side of you when you're used to seeing everybody's hands go up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the regular council meeting for November 14th, 2022 be adjourned at 1:58 p.m.
Thank you. Those in favor? That's carried. We're all adjourned.